If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
I can't wait to hear my theme song on Name That Tune one day. Thank you so much, Austin Angelo, and welcome everybody to another exciting episode of The Game Show, the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and I'm very excited to announce that on this, the 46th episode of The Game Show, I'm going to be chatting with reality competition show royalty. For the first time in the history of The Game Show, my special guest is a reality competition show winner. He is one half of a winning team from my favorite reality competition show of all time, The Amazing Race. And in my opinion, he ended up winning one of the best seasons of The Amazing Race in the show's nearly 20-year history.
I'm standing aboard the Queen Mary in the port of Long Beach, California. From this historic harbor, 11 teams will embark on a race around the world for $1 million. Helicopters are now racing the teams toward the harbor. Each team is made up of 2 people with an existing relationship. The 11 teams are Uchenna and Joyce, married from Houston, Texas.
Uchenna and I tried having a baby and it didn't work.
We've had 2 unsuccessful attempts in vitro. We've been laid off from several major corporations, and the financial burden has been enormous. We're looking to the race to re-spark our relationship and really make a team of us again.
Hopefully, when we win the money, we can have the baby that we dream of having.
Can these teams stand up to the stress of traveling together across more than 40,000 miles? Who will come up with the right combination of brains, brawn, and teamwork to win the $1 million? These are the questions waiting to be answered as we get ready to begin The Amazing Race. Joyce. Uchenna and Joyce, after 5 continents, 25 cities, and more than 40,000 miles, you are the official winners. As the winners of The Amazing Race, you have won the $1 million prize. Congratulations.
That is a $1 million winning cheer if I've ever heard one. As host Phil Kogan said, after 5 continents, 25 cities, and more than 40,000 miles, a winner for Season 7 of The Amazing Race was crowned. However, this winner certainly had to earn his victory back in 2005, as he had to endure the famous Argentina meat eating challenge, the classic Indian head shaving challenge, having no money to start the final leg of the race with, and every other challenge and obstacle in between. He and his race partner Joyce then came back to the race in 2007 to compete on the show's 11th season, The Amazing Race All-Stars. Joining me on the line is The Amazing Race Season 7 winner and Amazing Race All-Star, Uchenna Agu. Uchenna, thank you so much for joining me on the game show.
Bradley, it's a fantastic pleasure for me to be on with you today. And thank you very much for letting me participate with you. So how's life?
Life is good, especially now I'm talking to you. Life is even better.
Oh my goodness. Battery will get you everywhere, sir.
This is such an exciting moment to get a chance to talk to you, because the first time I watched The Amazing Race was when I was 8, and I can still remember watching Season 7 for the first time and just being mesmerized by all of the challenges, and even 15 years later, it is still one of my favorite seasons of not just The Amazing Race, but reality television. So it is a true honor to get a chance to chat with you today, Uchenna.
Wow. Well, I'm honored that you enjoyed the journey with us, because it definitely was a journey. And The Amazing Race is one of those things that you do want to share with people. From my perspective, you don't travel the world and not come back and talk about it, right? So it's an adventure of a lifetime. And I'm so happy to be able to chat about it with you as well.
And you are my 7th Amazing Race contestant I've had as a guest on the game show, and my 12th reality competition show contestant when counting Survivor Castaways. But Uchenna, you are my first winner, and when I started the game show, one of my goals was to have a reality competition show winner join me as my special guest on an episode. So thank you so much for being my first ever winner on the game show, and for checking that spot off my bucket list.
Awesome. Well, I was also on Season 7 of The Amazing Race as well, so the numbers kind of work.
Well, actually, it's funny because later on we're going to play a game. I always like to create a game for my guests, and I created a special Amazing Race themed game for you, and there's some number tie-ins to that as well. So it's going to be a number-filled tie-in show.
Oh, man, so you're going to just figure out how actually dumb I actually am.
No, I'm going to figure out how smart you are. You've been in that situation where you had to pull through, and I feel you're going to pull through for this one as well.
I look forward to taking the challenge.
So because I have a lot of questions for both Season 7 and Season 11, I thought for this episode we would just focus on Season 7, and then hopefully in the future, we can devote another episode of the game show to Season 11. So Uchenna, are you ready to take a trip down memory lane and talk about Season 7 of The Amazing Race with me?
Let's do it.
Well, as Phil would say at the starting line, the world is waiting for you. Good luck. Travel safe. Go! How was that, Uchenna? Was I just as good as Phil saying those lines?
Yes, and hearing that statement, it still gives me goosebumps, because it is a fantastic moment in my life, is to be able to start The Amazing Race after watching 6 seasons of it and not really wanting to do it necessarily. My wife was the one who was the catalyst behind it. Most people don't know this, but 4 years before, I was a finalist to be on Survivor Africa. So when that did not work out and they chose another guy, I was actually inoculated to go on the show. And at the end of the day, they chose another person after I had been inoculated. It was about 5 days before leaving. And I was a little salty about that. So when my wife came around and said, "Hey, we got to do this Amazing Race," I was like, not so much. But if it wasn't for her, we would not have had that experience.
I had no idea you were almost going to be on Survivor Africa, and I pride myself in knowing as much as I can about both The Amazing Race and Survivor. So you're already teaching me things, Uchenna.
Yep. In fact, the guy that replaced me was thrown out for eating like a can of beans or something behind everyone's back.
Oh, wow. So your replacement was Clarence Black.
Yes, he was the one who replaced me in that season.
Do you think you could have outwitted, outplayed, and outlasted all the others and beat Ethan Zahn?
I was prepared to go for it. Now, again, you only see the people when you're in that audition process. They don't let us talk or get to know each other at all. They get to know each other once they get to the island or wherever it is that they're going to be doing the show. So it's kind of interesting, because I remember seeing Ethan and Big Tom and all those people in the auditions, but they didn't allow us all to speak and get to know each other. We don't get to know each other until you get to the island or wherever they're going to have the show.
Now, you ended up winning season 7 of The Amazing Race, but imagine if you won Africa and then you were just on Winners at War of Survivor.
Oh, no. Would have loved that. And Survivor, after knowing a bunch of survivors and creating that sort of semi-adversarial relationship with Rob and Amber, it would have been interesting to be in that space with those guys again.
Some survivors end up going on The Amazing Race, and then the Twinnies were the first Amazing Racers to go on Survivor. Did you ever think about maybe applying for Survivor again and seeing if you could get on?
Well, I actually did. At the time I did, they were not letting people cross-pollinate that direction. They were letting them come to The Amazing Race because that was the newer show, and it was another CBS show, and it seemed to work going that direction. But I would have loved to have been on Survivor. After meeting several survivors, it depends on where it's going or whatever, but they come back with some pretty nasty viruses, and they come back feeling pretty bad after those things.
Is it true that you and Joyce were almost on the cast of season 6 of The Amazing Race?
Yeah, we were close to being cast at season 6, and I really think the reason we didn't get cast for that season was because in season 5, Chip and Kim won, and aesthetically, they look a lot like me and Joyce. So that was my reasoning behind it, just having another Chip and Kim come on the very next season. In fact, when we didn't get chosen for season 6, I was like washing my hands of the whole thing and let it go. And then 3 months later, they called us and asked if we still wanted to do it.
Well, I'm glad you said yes, because as I was recently watching season 7 again for probably the 7th or 8th time, I really focused on you and Joyce's race, and a lot of people who watch reality competition shows want the winner to be a great representative of the season that was shown to the viewers. And I really feel that you exemplified that statement when you and Joyce won.
Well, thank you very much. When you see the surprise at the very end, because we really did not know what was going to happen and whether the other team had gotten there before us, which is indicative to how the race has always been run. When you get to the mat, if someone gets there far enough ahead of you to where they can sort of shuffle them off to the side so you don't know what's happening, they'll do it. And that's exactly what happened there. I tell people this all the time. The Amazing Race was a journey that was priceless. Win or lose, it's a priceless journey. And they pick you because you have a competitive attitude and you're out there to win. However, over and above that, so much life is learned and so much life is enhanced by that journey if you allow it to.
Right, and I can't wait to get to the finale. But let's go all the way back to leg 1, where you're riding on a helicopter, heading for the starting line at the Queen Mary to hear Phil Kogan say go. When you were riding in those helicopters, especially after getting cut from Survivor Africa and then not making it onto season 6, was it exhilarating knowing that you are finally on The Amazing Race?
Oh, yeah. It was a bittersweet moment. And I say bittersweet because riding on those helicopters, we're at the top of the world thinking, oh my God, we're finally doing it. We're finally doing it. It's happening. It's about to begin. You just have the butterflies in your stomach and everything. And then as you're standing on that line, the thing that comes to mind is, God, just don't let me go out on the first leg of this race. You are riddled with excitement and a level of anxiety about getting it going. Because, everything came to that moment. And I've been in athletics my entire life, and I've done a bunch of different things. And that's exactly what happens. You are taken to another place mentally, and you don't think about anything else once that race starts. You don't think about home. You don't think about bills. You don't think about anything else. You actually fall into a bubble that is just that, which is great.
One team also participating on season 7 was Rob and Amber, who met and fell in love on Survivor All-Stars. Now, the Survivor All-Stars finale was on May 9th, 2004, which was a little over 6 months before the race started filming. Brad fact! Many teams particularly didn't like that Rob and Amber were on the race, but I'm curious if you viewed them as a CBS casting ploy or just another team that you had to beat to win the race.
A little both. Of course, it goes through everybody's mind. Wow, one of those guys just won Survivor. We're thinking about the fact that they're already somewhat celebrities around the world and they might get some favoritism. And then I was thinking, well, okay, maybe they will attract some attention that'll just allow us to just fly right by. Because if people are running up to them asking for autographs or whatever, it could distract them from the race. So it was either or. And at that point, The very first day, just like Survivor, we had not talked to, we did not know any of those other teams other than seeing them in auditions, but we weren't allowed to talk. So once we got there, people were trying to figure out who their alliances were going to be.
And after Phil said go, the first clue said to fly to Lima, Peru, but you could only travel on one of two flights, an American Airlines flight or a United flight. And then there comes the point where you get to the airline counter. There's 6 teams that can be on the first flight, and you were the 7th team at the counter. Mentally, how frustrating was that moment?
That really wasn't that frustrating for me because I knew there were 11 teams still. So you figure, okay, there's the cut. Now I'm going to be with the last 5 teams, but there's still 5 teams. And I always felt like if it comes down to a foot race, there was nobody in that entire thing that was going to beat me anywhere. Nobody. I knew that from the very beginning. So I knew if I could stay close at any point in time, a foot race would be my advantage. So that early in the race, it was just, okay, it's about focus. And I'll admit that I think the camera guys who you never really talked to during the race said that Joyce and I were probably the team that was taking in all the sights, and we didn't show the level of intensity that other people were showing early on. And that played in our favor because if you notice, no one really even considered us as the race was going on. They were like, oh, they're nice, but they just seem too laid back, which worked in our behalf.
So continuing on with leg 1, after traveling from Lima to Ancon, Peru, you and Joyce were the last team to arrive at Playa Hermosa, in which you had to dig in a pile of sand for plane tickets on one of 3 flights to Cusco. You ended up getting tickets on the 7 a.m. flight, which was actually the second flight due to other teams making a mistake by finding tickets on the later 7:40 a.m. flight, despite arriving to the beach earlier than you. So when you saw that the last set of tickets were for 7 a.m., did you immediately think that you were on the last flight? And when did you actually find out that you were on the second of the 3 flights?
It was interesting because, of course, we felt like we were one of the few last people to get there. So we expected to get the tail end of everything. And just the way it worked out, it's like, that's when we looked at each other and said, never lay back, never quit, because anything can happen. And that was one of those moments where it's like, we still got 40 minutes ahead of teams that got there 40 minutes before us. We were excited. We were really excited. And we still didn't know each other. We didn't know the other teams very well. We didn't even know to celebrate other than between ourselves.
And then the 7 a.m. flight was experiencing technical difficulties, and you and Joyce had to scramble with the other teams to get on the 7:40 flight.
Right. And these moments, you just never know how they're going to unfold. And it translates to life. Just keep moving. Keep moving. Don't stop. If you notice, a lot of times teams stopped and kind of wandered around, started looking around, and just waiting for other people to react, respond. You got to keep moving. You just can't rely on the others, because if you notice, there were lies told, there were tricks played. Getting off the bus, that one bus where Rob had used our money to pay the bus driver not to open the back door. I mean, little devious acts occur, but you know what? I'll tell you one thing. The Amazing Race is a bubble, and karma kicks in immediately. In real life, you can kind of do something a little dirty. You may not see the karma happen for years. Well, it seems like things come right back and slap you in the head really soon after you do something that is underhanded or whatever in the race. You don't get through the whole thing being a pirate, as you want to call it that way.
After a detour and a couple other tasks, you checked into the first pit stop in 8th place. Now, due to Season 7 having a 2-hour premiere episode, the first leg was one of the longest legs in Amazing Race history. So between all the traveling and the tasks, how tough was that first leg as a whole?
The first leg was the most challenging, as I said, most stressful because of the stakes being so high. And just me being a competitive person, I just could not imagine going out on the first leg. So that was probably the most stressful leg in the entire race, except for the last leg.
The first clue on leg 2 required teams to travel by bus to Arequipa, Peru, and at the bus station, Rob revealed that him and Amber, you and Joyce, and Ray and Dina talked about teaming up the night before during the pit stop rest time. What was that conversation about, and what was your strategy in aligning with Rob and Amber and Ray and Dina so early on in the race?
Ray and I had started to develop a friendship, but I didn't trust anybody. However, I had pretty much figured Rob and Amber are going to be the most devious, most underhanded. So I thought, if there's going to be an alliance, I want to be aligned at least to know what they're going to do, how they're going to do what they're going to do. So it worked out for us initially. And between Joyce and I, we kind of talked about it and said, all right, we're going to proceed with caution, because you can end up having your butt handed to you by somebody like that, because you don't know where their heads are at. You don't know if they're really going to be loyal and do what they say they're going to do. But if you have any brains in your head, you're going to just proceed with caution.
You mentioned the moment on leg 2 where Rob convinced the bus driver to open only the front door in exchange for money that was provided by you and Joyce, Ray and Dina, and Ron and Kelly, with Rob putting his share of the money back into his pocket. Do you find it a coincidence that 3 out of the 4 teams in that transaction ended up being the final 3 teams in the race?
Now, I hadn't even thought about that until you just mentioned it. But yeah, it's interesting how that kind of all came about. And that might have been a defining moment that set in place a wave that ended up being fulfilled later on. And Ray could have easily been there, but I think he didn't know how to manage Dina, to motivate her and keep her head in the game. I just started watching the season for the first time in its entirety about a week ago. I have this thing about watching myself on video, being that I've done a lot of on-air stuff. I hardly ever watch myself. I'll watch other teams or other races, but I hardly ever just sit down in quiet and watch my own thing. So I really have never watched fully our season myself. And I'm only doing it because some really, really close friends of mine who are now close friends did not know me at that time, and they are pressing to watch it. They want me to watch it with them because they were not watching Amazing Race at that time.
So what are your thoughts of watching it back?
I wish I had watched it sooner, because it was a magical time. It was a high adventure time in my life. So it was a really, really special. And you reminisce over things. Also, I try not to get stuck in something. It's like, well, what's next? What are we doing next? What's my next adventure? And that's what I've been focusing on. I try to focus on the next adventure, not the one that I've just completed. But it's been wonderful.
Let's move on to leg 3, which featured the famous meat eating challenge in Mendoza, Argentina. You and Joyce were the 5th team to arrive at the roadblock, and you chose to perform the task. After seeing who was eating, how confident were you that you would be able to finish and possibly beat some of the other teams?
I was probably one of the bigger guys there, and I was prepared for eating things. That's where Joyce and I excel, is tasks. So I went into that with full confidence that I was going to do well, and especially the fact that the others had 4-hour penalties, and I was already there when they quit. I knew I would be leaving 1, 2, or 3. Again, our strategy was not to win each leg, because at that time, they were not giving big prizes every leg that you win. So you're only racing to be first the last leg of the race. That's it. So that was my strategy going in. I was not thinking, oh, we got to be first at any one time. We liked to be first, and it would have been great. However, we were keeping our head in the game about staying in the game. That was what it was about, staying in the game. So yeah, the eating challenge, it didn't show the projectile vomiting that I did during there. And I know they got video of it, but it was pretty intense. So I didn't keep all of that in my gut.
Rob came up with his so-called genius plan to quit and force other teams to quit so he couldn't be eliminated. Did Rob ever come up to you or Joyce to try to manipulate you to quit?
No, he knew I was going to do it. I'm just a bigger person.
Do you look at meat differently since completing that challenge? Because I know if I had to eat 4 pounds of meat in one sitting, every time I walk down the meat aisle at the supermarket, I would be thinking back to that challenge.
No, I'm a foodie. I love it. And yeah, there was some weird stuff, but that wasn't the most weird stuff I had to eat up to that point. So I was good to go. I came away loving every element of it. I think more than anything, I was turned on by everything that I encountered and want to experience most of those things again. And I wouldn't look forward to eating that Argentinian barbecue with all the extra parts, but it was tasty. And the thing is, when I got mine, it was hot when I started. The hard part was when it was cold. It got cold and the flies started coming in, and flies don't land on hot food. So the majority of what I ate had no flies on it. And then it was the end that was the gross part, because flies, you know where they come from. Poop Central.
Although you arrived 5th, you ended up finishing the meet first, which is a tremendous accomplishment in its own right. However, you ended up taking a wrong turn driving to the pit stop, so Lynn and Alex beat you to the mat. Was it a disappointment knowing that you had crushed the challenge, but the drive to the pit stop prevented you and Joyce from a first place finish?
That is always a disappointment if you're a competitor. It was a shock, and we definitely thought we had that win, but it is what it is. We were not going to let that get us down. That was one of our biggest problems, directions. So we fall behind trying to get places, and then we catch up or pass everyone during the challenges.
Now we're on to leg 4 with 7 teams remaining, and although you semi-worked with Rob and Amber on previous occasions, was this the point where you knew alliances were going to start fizzling out?
Yeah, I mean, you have to play it open, because if you openly show an alliance with anyone who's not in that alliance sees you as an enemy. And they were seen as an enemy by most teams coming in. So I wasn't going to let myself be caught up in that too deep. And I saw how Rob treated Ray a couple of times. And then there was another time where it seemed like Ray didn't tell us something. And it's like, you know what? Let's just run our race. We know what we're going to do. We know how we plan on doing it. We're not going to spend our time looking at other people. And that's the key. Any race that you're in, if you're looking at the person in the lane to the left or lane to the right, you're not running your race. You need to be focused on the finish line. And that's the whole thing, man. That's one of the things that you don't think people are even thinking about. And you don't think that that's a factor in how well you do in a race, but it is. I mean, if I got obsessed with Rob and what he's going to do next or what he might do next, I would put myself in a horrible situation. Or if I start assuming that he knows something or that he's going to have the right answer and he doesn't, I could be following him over a cliff. A couple of times I saw him make moves they didn't know the answer to. And that type of scenario doesn't help you to follow other people.
A little foreshadowing, but good thing you never asked Rob how to spell the word Philippines.
See, there you go.
So after 4 legs in South America, the first clue in leg 5 was to fly to Johannesburg, South Africa. Now, every time the race travels to Africa, there's always that spark of joy and amazement in the teams when they read that clue. Did that feeling occur for you and Joyce as well?
Oh, absolutely. Especially South Africa was one of my bucket list places to go, for sure.
Speaking of bucket list, prior to starting the race, did you and Joyce have a bucket list of countries you were hoping to visit while on the race?
Yeah, we did have a bucket list of places that would have been nice to go to, but at the end of the day, would you set yourself up for disappointment by having that list? So we were just like, you know what, whatever comes, because you don't know where they're going to send you. And the couple of places that I would have wanted to go was Paris, and I wanted to go to China. We did go to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong was a destination on the Amazing Race All-Stars, but you were eliminated in Malaysia, which was the destination before Hong Kong. Brad fact!
We got eliminated in Malaysia, but we actually were still in the race, even though we were out of the race. And that's another conversation that I'm sure you'll enjoy.
Well, you certainly got my curiosity juices flowing, and I can't wait to ask you to share that story when we talk about All-Stars on a future episode. But continuing on with leg 5, you and Joyce and Ron and Kelly were the only 2 teams forced to check your bags on the flight to Johannesburg. Is this a moment on the race where you go, why do we pick this airline counter and why is this happening to us?
Of course. And again, you always have to think, okay, well, there's customs. You get your bag, but still, we caught up with them, and this is stuff you don't know. You still have to go through customs in all these cities. Now, of course, the sooner you get into customs, the sooner you get out. But that could be an hour situation. So even in that scenario, all is not totally lost. Again, I still had in the back of my mind, if it came down to a foot race, it would be fine. There's no way I was thinking I'm going to be eliminated in the first 5 after I made it through the first 1.
Leg 5 was a non-elimination leg, and starting in Season 5, if you were last on a non-elimination leg, you got your money taken away from you. But Season 7 introduced a new penalty. Not only did you have all your money taken away, but now you have all your possessions taken away, which means you have to start the next leg with no money, you weren't given any money, and now you have to run the entire race with just your passports and the clothes on your back. When you first heard about this new penalty, what was your initial reaction?
Oh, God. It didn't bother me as much, but I was with my wife, who has an affinity for her belongings. I just thought about what she might need over the course of the race. But it was very liberating not having those backpacks. In fact, everyone weighed their backpacks when we first started as we were getting to that first airport. And ours outweighed everyone's by almost 25 pounds each. We were carrying 40 and 50 pound bags. And we ended up leaving most of that stuff all over the world. after using it or something getting dirty or whatever, just leaving it, putting it in a trash can or whatever.
And you were not told about the extra penalty of losing your possessions until Meredith and Gretchen arrived at the pit stop, correct?
Right. And when they had that penalty hit them, it's like, wow, okay, it gets real now. But they were still in the race. And that is always the best.
Leg 6 in Botswana featured one of the scariest Amazing Race moments of all time, and that was when Brian and Greg got into a major car accident on their way to the detour. Now, Lynn and Alex were very annoyed that Rob and Amber did not stop and ask if everyone was okay. And when you and Joyce came up to the car wreck, you did stop and ask if everybody was fine, but you didn't actually get out of the car like Lynn and Alex did. Did you not get out because you thought waiting around with Brian and Greg would waste time for you and Joyce?
Well, it wasn't about that. When we pulled over to find out if everybody was okay, they told us, go ahead, move on. There's nothing that you can do here. So we stopped. When you look at what Rob said in his truck about this is a race, that just led to putting the different pieces together, because at the end of the day, Lynn and Alex, they just really despised Rob and Amber so much, and they made them their focus versus focusing on the race. So unfortunately, Lynn and Alex are great guys. It's just that they really let the whole Rob thing get under their skin. Once you know you can't trust a person and you know that they're going to do certain things, leave it alone. You don't have to bicker about it. You don't have to talk about it. Just keep it moving. So unfortunately, I think Rob and Amber were a big distraction for Lynn and Alex, but I think that's why they were cast.
And the pit stop for Leg 6 was located at the largest salt pan in the world. So since all the teams would be spending the night out there, were you able to watch the foot race to the mat between Brian and Greg and Ray and Dina?
Yeah, I was there for the photo finish, and it was heartbreaking, man, because I like both of the teams. Ray and I are still great friends. And so he and I, by that time, had developed a friendship that was definitely going to last beyond the race. So it was a sad moment, but it was also a wake-up call. I also believe that anybody can win and anybody can be thrown out. So it makes you get your snap together and say, all right, I need to focus. Make sure that I don't get myself in a position of looking at other teams and watching what everybody else is doing and getting frustrated. Just run my race.
For Leg 7, teams continued racing through Botswana, and during the roadblock where you had to drive through the crocodile-infested waters followed by moving 2 logs out of the road, you failed to remove your designated marking post, but instead only removed the flag attached to the post. As a result, when you checked in at the pit stop, you had to drive back and remove the post before officially checking in. Usually at the mat, if Phil says you're the 3rd team to arrive instead of your team number 3, that means you did something wrong. So when Phil said you're the 3rd team to arrive, were you a little suspicious because the TV footage showed you and Joyce not really celebrating a 3rd place finish in the moment?
Yeah. Immediately, you can tell the difference in his tonation and everything. When we realized that we had done something wrong, or I had done something wrong, because it wasn't a week, I actually pulled the flag off the post instead of taking the whole post. And it does boil down to directions, and it could have cost us. But what's interesting is going back to get that post, on the way back, somehow we got a little bit lost and found a shortcut. And we saw so many animals. It was actually a pretty cool return back to the mat. So that moment turned out to have a serendipitous positive effect as well. It's heartbreaking because you're thinking, oh God, how long is it going to take me to go back? Can I find that place? And is this it? Is this the thing that's going to get me thrown out?
But luckily for you and Joyce, despite having to go all the way back to complete the roadblock correctly, the 2 of you still finished the leg in 3rd place. Leg 8 was one of the craziest legs in Amazing Race history. To start off, the first clue said to fly to Lucknow, India, and as seen during previous visits to India on The Amazing Race and visits after Season 7, India is probably the craziest, most intense locations to travel to on the race. So when you read that India was the next destination, were you excited for the challenges that India might present, or was there a bit of a worry because of how chaotic it might be?
Well, when we ran that race, we really didn't have but 6 races ahead of us to have reference of what is and what isn't a good thing or what other people have experienced. Because one of the best and worst things that you can do when you do something like The Amazing Race is spend a bunch of time watch what everybody else did and how everyone else's race was run. Because you as an individual are going to run your race. And we got there, we knew it was exciting. It was places that we'd never been. So we were really looking forward to that opportunity. So we were excited. Every leg of the race that you're on is a blessing. And so you're constantly thinking, wow, okay, here's a new adventure about to start all over again. Wow.
And after the detour, the clue instructed the teams to make your way to fill out the map, but it didn't say that it was a pit stop. Did you and Joyce initially pick up on the wording of that clue?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You pick up on all that stuff. It's like, make your way to the mat, okay? Well, it didn't say someone may be eliminated. So the first thing we thought is this is a non-elimination leg. That's the first thing you think of. You don't think of it like being an extension.
And then Phil drops the bomb on you and gives you your next clue.
Yeah, and you had mentally prepared yourself for a rest. And then it's like, oh, goodness, we got to keep going. But it's a game, so it's so fun. The twists and turns are just as fun as all the different things you're experiencing. So it was cool. I always felt like the more tasks we have, the better we're going to do in this thing. It's the getting lost that was really messing us up more often than not.
The second half of Leg 8 featured the second of 2 fast forwards found on the race course. Now, as soon as Joyce pulled out the fast forward clue, without even reading it, she said, "Let's go for it." So, Uchenna, did you have the same reaction of going for the fast forward as well when you saw the clue?
Yeah, we knew we were going to take a chance at a fast forward, and that was the one. We're getting the clue before most of the other teams. It'll give us a head start on doing the fast forward. So we felt confident.
The fast forward required both team members to participate in an Indian good luck ritual by shaving their heads. But the clue itself only said that you would be partaking in an Indian good luck ritual, but did not mention head shaving. However, Joyce, on the way to the temple that the task was located at, mentioned that she hoped it wasn't a head shaving challenge. Now, this fast forward task involving the head shaving was first used 2 seasons prior in season 5. The wording of the clue was the exact same, but the challenge was not completed. Brad fact! So did you see that episode, and that's why Joyce had an idea of what the fast forward task might be?
Yeah, and the couple that declined from doing it were from Houston as well. But yeah, she had an inkling that that was what it was going to be, and I was praying it wasn't in my mind. But again, it's India. That's where it happened before. Let's see what happens. I hesitated to put myself in that predictory mindset. So she did that for both of us. And lo and behold, there it was.
A very inspirational moment occurred as Joyce was getting her head shaved. Was it tough for you to watch Joyce have to shave her head, Uchenna? And how inspiring was it to see her accomplish that fast forward task?
It was very inspiring, and it was tough to watch. But I often tell people that I never saw the beautiful person that she was at that level until that moment. I saw a whole different facets of her. I watched her courage. I saw competitiveness. I saw determination. I saw a strength that really was awe-inspiring for me. And, you know, women don't cut their hair off for a whim. It's usually a grave thing of some sort of illness or in support of somebody doing that. Most women will never shave their heads in the course of their lifetime. So as far as I was concerned, you were either in the way or on the way to us having a good rest of that race. She was incredible.
And that good fortune ritual ended up giving you and Joyce the Leg 8 win. And after another first place finish on Leg 9 in Istanbul, Turkey, we now move on to Leg 10 in jolly old London, England. Now at this point you knew that there was still one non-elimination leg left in the race, and despite the previous leg being a non-elimination leg, did you think Leg 10 would also be a non-elimination leg? Or did you figure this was the leg that determined the 3 teams that would be racing to the finish line?
You're always thinking that there's going to be an elimination. So you're never betting on, oh, we could take a foot off the gas because it's a non-elimination. You're never thinking that. You're always thinking that it's going to be an elimination until it's not. So that's where our mindsets were, is do the best that we can while we're doing it. And at the end of the day, if it's an elimination, great. If it's a non-elimination, great. But don't be last. Don't put yourself in a position to have that be an issue.
It was official. You and Joyce were one of the 3 teams racing to the finish line for the $1 million. But you knew that Leg 11 was going to be a non-elimination leg. The 11th leg took place in Kingston, Jamaica, and for you and Joyce, one of the worst things that could happen to a team on the Amazing Race occurred while you were on your way to the pit stop. Your cab got a flat tire. Now, Uchenna, when you heard the tire pop, what was going through your mind, and did you immediately think this was the nail in the coffin for this leg?
You know, by that time, we were very, very high on what the possibilities were. And I never really lost faith too much. It's like, okay, we just got to keep going. Let's hope that this is a non-elimination leg. That's when you start hoping for stuff, when you fall behind like that. And lo and behold, it did work out. But it's like, oh, my goodness, so easily could have lost it there. And that became the hardest part of the whole race for us. The rest of the race was uphill for us.
You ended up arriving to the pit stop last, and you and Joyce became the first team in Amazing Race history to start the final leg of the race with no money and no possessions to your name. Brad fact! To me, losing your possessions on the final leg wasn't too bad because most teams forego their bags on the plane or at the airport on the final leg anyway, so that they don't have anything extra to carry while racing to the finish line. However, losing your money when the final leg is typically all taxi-based, that was going to be tough. Rob and Amber and Ron and Kelly both received $425. So when you saw that the other teams received so much money for the leg, did it worry you? Because production, I'm sure, figures out the correct amount of money teams need in order to sufficiently complete the leg. And $425 means that there was going to be a good amount of money needed to be spent on the final leg.
Yeah, that was the whole uphill climb. We have to get enough money to get out of the country. We started thinking about the logistics, and if they said $400 they gave them, it's like, wow, we were going to be behind. So the begging began immediately. And that was probably the most difficult thing about the entire race was begging, because the cameras were really far back, and we looked like two homeless people trying to hustle up some cash. And I learned a lot in those moments about myself, what I really need. And then I also learned about what it's like to be on the wrong end of a begging hand, a hand out, which you knew you could not repay. That was a growth moment for us.
Are you allowed to say that you're on The Amazing Race when begging to get some leverage?
No, you're not allowed to use the show as leverage. Now, as time progresses, you notice that they don't allow the teams to beg anymore because people were starting the race off begging to get extra money immediately. So they ended up having to change that rule. There's no reason for people to be begging when they don't need to. So teams were doing that in races 8, 9, until they stopped that.
After flying to San Juan, Puerto Rico, and completing the final roadblock of the race, the final destination city was revealed to be Miami, Florida. And now we've come to the famous airport incident of Season 7, in which Rob and Amber just barely made it onto the first flight to Miami departing at 10 a.m. However, the ticket lady that you were getting your tickets for the 11:15 a.m. flight from figured you wouldn't make the 10 a.m. flight since it was already boarding, so you weren't told about that flight. You then rushed over to the gate and the same ticketing lady who misinformed you was there. You then pleaded and begged to get on the flight, and after one of the attendants made a call to the pilot, you were able to get onto the flight. Now, there was a lot of controversy among viewers saying that production interfered with the flight to get you and Joyce on. You, of course, know this was in fact not the case, and that it was the pilot who allowed you to get on the flight, not production interfering. But Uchenna, what were your thoughts when you heard people speculated that the situation might not have been what it seemed to be on television?
There's two things. No one said anything about the flight that Rob and Amber got on earlier in the race, that they really shouldn't have gotten on, right? What I take exception to is the fact that production did not see what I was doing to get on that flight. Begging and talking to the people who run the flight. I actually threatened one of them, and a lot went into us getting on that flight because the airline kept the information from us because Rob had asked them to. So that in itself would have looked bad on the airline if that recording of that conversation. So I said, listen, guys, you on purpose did not tell us about this because that guy paid you or told you not to do it. So if you were the airline, you're thinking, that looks bad. And then if you're the production, you're like, we can't air that because that will look bad on the airline. So it never was truly resolved in that way. But I went bananas to get on that flight and they didn't show it. So the controversy behind it, it doesn't even faze me because you just weren't there and it was done fairly and squarely. But I really don't care what people think about that kind of stuff anymore. It used to bother me because I feel like I'm a good person and I would never do anything to cheat. So it used to bother me, but now it's like, if you ever know anything about production, if you ever know anything about making sure that your client, because the airline was a client, you're not going to do anything to make them look bad or whatever. It's just more to it than what you think you see on the screen.
And after having to travel to a couple additional locations, you arrive at the Bonnet House in Fort Lauderdale, which was the finish line. And the only thing standing between you and Joyce winning the race was paying your cab driver. Now, it didn't seem like too many people were around to ask money from, but you needed $50 to pay your cab driver. So how long did it eventually take for you to come up with the $50?
We were out there about 25, 30 minutes. It was long enough for Rob and Amber, if they were closer, to come and pass us right at the finish line. That was stressful, very stressful moment.
And then you run through the gates of the Bonnet House, jump on the finish line mat, and you and Joyce were crowned the official winners of the 7th season of The Amazing Race. you were the fourth co-ed team to win, the second African-American team to win, and this was one of the toughest races, I think, not only up to that point, but in the show's history. How much of an accomplishment is it knowing that you won such a strenuous race against some of the toughest competition any race has ever seen?
When I hear it's coming from you that way, it does sound like a monumental feat. And the race itself is a monumental feat. And the competition was very, very stiff. And any one of the people in that race could have won. So I'm honored and humbled by having that experience and being able to run that race. And at the same time, it's a boost for your life when you really think about how much struggle that you can go through and still come out on the other side in one piece.
When all of the teams joined you on the finish line, Matt, were many of the racers asking Joyce what happened to her hair?
Oh, yeah. That commentary was like, what? She showed up bald. And so the teams that were out well before that were like, what happened? And I think they were getting updates from sequester because when you die in the race, you go to heaven. And what that statement means is if you get eliminated, they send you to some sort of resort somewhere. And I think you're getting updated as to what's going on and who's where after a while. But all you really know is if someone shows up, there's another elimination. So the teams were great. I think the teams were really, really wonderful. And at some level, I think most of them were rooting for us to win.
With Season 7 airing in 2005 and us currently being in the year 2020, it has now officially been 15 years since Season 7 was first broadcast on CBS. Can you believe, Uchenna, 15 years has already passed, and does it still feel like yesterday that you won The Amazing Race?
It's amazing, and it seems like it's only been a year or two. It was a highlight in my personal life, and it's a fantastic experience.
Did you keep any mementos from along the race course, and if so, do you still have them?
Oh, yeah. I have clues. I have that flag that I took off of the post that I ended up having to go back. I have that flag still. And yeah, there's been several mementos that I've kept and held close to me for sure.
Now, Survivor just had their all-winner season. Are you hoping Amazing Race will, in the near future, have an all-winner season, and would you like to participate?
Anytime I have an opportunity to participate in the Amazing Race, I would be there in a heartbeat. And all winners, that would be cool. It would be nice to see Joyce again and see if we could do some damage and win another one. Or I always thought it would be a great idea to mix it up. For instance, me and Ray would be a team, Joyce and somebody else, and just mix it up completely and see what happens there with the alliances and how things would work out with some mixed up teams.
I always said they should have a super fan with a past racer race together.
That would be a cool one too. And fans pick the racers. That would be cool.
And I always like to ask this to Amazing Race contestants. Do you still keep in contact with any fellow competitors? I know you said Ray, but anyone else you keep in contact with?
Every now and then I'll hear from Rob and Amber. Dina, Ray's wife, I mean, they're not together anymore, but I'll connect with her every now and then. Chip and Kim, I communicate with them pretty regularly. There's always some reason to connect with your old racer friends, which is awesome. There's a function called Give Kids the World in Orlando, and I'll go to that every couple of years, and there'll be tons of racers there that I know. And then the Reality Rally in California, I'm looking forward to going there because I understand that there's a bunch of racers that participate in that. And then up in Dallas, there's a Survivor Challenge that also brings in survivors, racers, Big Brothers, American Ninjas. So Charity World has really been a plus for keeping in touch with past racers, which is absolutely awesome.
The race has certainly changed since both Season 7 and Season 11. For instance, the race itself and the individual legs are significantly shorter. Teams are provided with airline tickets on many of the legs. The U-turn has replaced the yield, and the speed bump is now the non-elimination penalty. So, Uchenna, what is your perspective on the current state of the Amazing Race?
Just like anything, to keep it fresh, you have to make the adjustments. Where teams can't go in knowing what to do, they have to have some element of keeping people on their toes about the race. If the race hadn't changed from the time I was doing it, then it would be pretty boring by now. So I'm all for change. I'm all for the adaptations and the evolution that occurs. So I'm a proponent of the change because it actually makes it more interesting for me to watch. Or for me, if I happen to get in again, it won't be the same old thing. I won't be able to rely on doing things the old way.
Well, Uchenna, we have reached my favorite portion of the game show, and it's always fun for me to prove how big of an Amazing Race superfan I truly am by creating a game for a former Amazing Racer to play. So I am so excited to share my latest game creation with you. It is time for the Game of the Day.
Game of the Day.
So as I mentioned at the start of the show, this game is inspired by one of the challenges you encountered on season 7 of The Amazing Race. And do you have any guesses about which challenge I'm referring to?
No, I have no idea at this point.
Well, it is the famous meat-eating challenge in Argentina that we talked about earlier. So we're about to play a game called They Ate What? They Ate What?
Okay.
And since this game is based on the Argentina meat-eating challenge, today's game background music will be the song Don't Cry For Me Argentina from the musical Evita. And here's how the game works. In honor of you winning the 7th season of The Amazing Race, in front of me are 7 numbered cards. Each card contains a question about an eating challenge that was featured on a season of The Amazing Race. These eating challenges could be from seasons before season 7 or seasons after season 7. But I will let you know that there is not a question about the meat-eating challenge in season 7 or the sausage-eating detour task in season 11. You can choose the numbered cards in any order that pleases you, and once you pick a number, I will read the question. If you can answer the question in the open-ended form, you'll score 2 points. However, if you're struggling to come up with an answer, you can choose to use a detour, which means I will give you 2 answer choices, with one of them being the correct answer. However, use your detours wisely because you only get 2. And if you use a detour, the value of the question is cut in half to only 1 point. Now, Uchenna, in honor of your placement on the Amazing Race All-Stars, if you can score at least 5 points by the end of the 7th question, you will be deemed a winner. So Uchenna, you won the real Amazing Race. Are you ready to try and win an Amazing Race trivia game right here on the game show?
Let's go for it.
Then let's play They Ate What? Remember, Uchenna, 5 points or more are needed to win, and don't forget about your 2 detours. So which number would you like to start with?
Question number 4.
Question number 4 it is, and here comes your first question of the game. On leg 8 of season 13, to win the fast forward, one team had to eat a serving of kurduk, that's K-U-R-D-U-K, a dish in which the main ingredient is fat from a sheep's rear end. In what country did this challenge take place?
That happened in Ireland.
Are you locking in Ireland?
I'll lock Ireland in.
It's actually Kazakhstan. But have no fear, Uchenna, there are still 6 more questions, so which number would you like next?
7.
Lucky number 7. The second half of leg 6 during season 6 featured 2 eating type challenges in Budapest, Hungary, drinking a goblet of pig's blood and eating a bowl of traditional Hungarian spicy soup. Which of these challenges was a fast forward task?
I believe it was the soup.
Are you locking that in?
I'm locking that in.
It was actually the pig's blood.
I should have went with my gut. My gut said the pig's blood, but I'm thinking, but yes, a goblet of pig's blood. Okay. All right. Now, question number 2.
Question number 2 it is. During the first leg of season 15 in Tokyo, Japan, the roadblock required one team member to participate in a Japanese game show and eat what spicy food?
Let's go for the detour on this one.
Okay, is it a karashi bomb or a wasabi bomb?
It's a wasabi bomb. Locked in. Let's go with it.
Well, Uchenna, I am pleased to tell you that you have your first correct answer. It is wasabi bomb.
Yes, yes. Ha! I knew it was something with wasabi. Yes. All right. So let's go with question number 1.
Number 1. During leg 8 of season 10, an intersection fast forward in Madagascar required all 4 members of the newly joined team to eat a serving of what part of a cow?
Oh, what part of a cow? Okay, I'll use a detour on this one.
Okay, is it lips or udder?
Lips.
Are you locking that
I
in?
think I remember that. I'm locking lips in. That's 2 points for me right there.
Well, you seem confident, and you should be, because it is lips.
Yes, yes. All right, I got 2 points. All right. Yeah, I definitely remember the lips.
You now have 2 points, meaning you just need 3 more points for a win. But Uchenna, you have no detours left, so you are on your own. Which number next?
How about question number 3? Haven't done that.
You got it. Question number 3. The roadblock during leg 4 of season 5 in Pushkin, Russia required one team member to eat approximately how many pounds of caviar to receive their next clue?
I believe it was approximately 2 pounds.
You locking that in?
Yes, locking it in.
The other two, you needed a detour to get the right answer. But this one, you got all by yourself. It is 2 pounds.
Yes. Look at that.
Participants had to eat 1 kilogram of caviar, which is 2.2 pounds of fish eggs. Brad fact! You now have 4 points, Uchenna, which means you have 2 chances to get 1 correct answer. Questions number 5 and 6 remain. Which one would you like?
Number 5.
Number 5 it is. And for the win, here's the question. During leg 10 of season 4 in Seoul, South Korea, the detour choice Strong Stomach required each team member to eat a dish made of what raw seafood that still moved on the plate?
That was the octopus.
Are you locking in octopus?
Locking it in.
If the detour option was available, the 2 choices would have been eel or octopus. However, you didn't need the help of the detour. Octopus is the correct answer, which means with 6 points, Uchenna, you have just won this game of They Ate What?
Yes. All right.
And just for fun, there's 1 question left. Would you like to try and answer it, Uchenna?
Last but not least, question number 6.
During the second half of leg 10 on season 14, a roadblock required 1 team member to eat a plate of Chinese delicacies consisting of a grasshopper, beetle larva, a scorpion, and a starfish. This challenge took place at a street market in what Chinese city?
Chinese city. Shanghai.
Lock that in?
Locking it in.
It was actually Beijing, China, but that's okay because at the end of the day, Uchenna, not only have you won season 7 of The Amazing Race, but now you have just won this game of They Ate What?
Well, I feel great about that, man. I appreciate that, Bradley.
You're very welcome, Uchenna. And that was the game of the day. They ate what? They ate what? Well, Uchenna, this has been such a treat for me getting the chance to talk with you about The Amazing Race. So thank you so much for letting me live out my Amazing Race superfan dream by joining me today on the game show.
It's been a plum-pleasing pleasure to chat with you today. I really appreciate your interest in Amazing Race 7 and the fact that you are a super fan of the show itself. I hope to be hearing more things about you, especially as a contestant one day.
Well, I hope so. My dream is to get on the race one day. You never know, we might be teammates in the super fan past racer race idea that I have.
I actually have great confidence that we would do well if we were teamed up together.
I have a feeling we would make a great team as well. All right, Uchenna, thank you so much again for chatting with me about The Amazing Race Season 7 today. And whenever you would like to come back onto the show to talk about your experience on The Amazing Race All-Stars, I'll be here with a bunch of new questions and curiosities about Season 11.
My pleasure, Bradley. The pleasure is truly mine. And you reach out anytime you like, and we'll definitely chat some more. All right?
Sounds like a plan to me. Well, Uchenna, take care and stay safe.
Take care and stay positive.
I certainly will. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, it looks like we've landed on the finish line, Matt, for this episode of The Game Show. My thanks once again to Uchenna Agu, one half of teammates Uchenna and Joyce, Season 7 winners of The Amazing Race, and 5th place finishers on Season 11, The Amazing Race All-Stars, for being my guests today. Now, if you are a super fan of The Amazing Race just like me, you know that Uchenna competed against Team Guido and Team Kevin and Drew on The Amazing Race All-Stars. Well, on previous episodes of The Game Show, my guests have included Amazing Race legends Joe Baldessare and Bill Bartek, aka Team Guido, and Kevin O'Connor from Team Kevin and Drew. If you would like to listen to any of these amazing episodes, pun intended, all you have to do is log on to www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. That's www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/The Game Show. Plus, don't forget to like The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Facebook, And follow The Game Show starring Bradley Clarke on Twitter using the handle @TheGameShowBC and hashtag #TheGameShow. But of course, be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of The Talk Show, all about the world of television game and competition shows, The Game Show. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and I've got to go finish eating all of my Argentine meat. I am definitely not taking a penalty. Bye for now. All of the Amazing Race cuts and sounds used during this episode of The Game Show are courtesy of the CBS Television Network.
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke. This is Austin Angelo speaking.
The Game Show is a Bradley Clarke production. Get your game on.